The Epstein saga continues. And the latest, as you know, is related in part to Congress, in part to Trump, and in part to Jeffrey Epstein's surviving partner, Ghislaine Maxwell. Quickly, the Congress part. Knowing that there's a radioactivity about this Epstein thing, but also knowing that there's great public interest in it and a cry to release the Epstein files, which have no chance of seeing the light of day, it would seem. Congress, wanting to avoid a vote on whether or not the Epstein files should be revealed, they canceled the last day of votes before the summer break. Mike Johnson expressing frustration, and his coalition of Republicans, who he did get together to pass that big bill, that coalition is fracturing around this Jeffrey Epstein question, the question of the files and their release. And so the GOP-controlled House is cutting short its last work week before the summer recess because of a fight over the release of the government files of the late financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The House scheduled to hold votes on Thursday before lawmakers departed for their 5-week recess, but Republican leaders informed rank-and-file lawmakers today that the final vote of the week would now be a day earlier on Wednesday, the shift in the schedule occurring because of a standoff on the Rules Committee, which decides how legislation comes to the floor. But that Rules Committee has been ground to a halt by this Epstein issue. They are closely aligned with Speaker Mike Johnson, and they want to avoid an embarrassing vote on Epstein, right? As I say, they haven't been able to keep this coalition together. So they're going to recess the committee, not attempt to pass a rule for bills this week. And without a rules, they have to meet, again, this is all that parliamentary stuff. They meet, there's a rules session, and they craft a strategy as to whether or not to require the Trump administration to release all the remaining files from the Epstein case. That vote will not happen now. So that Rules Committee, which, again, is the committee before you allow bills to come to the floor for debate, they're now just deciding we're adjourning early. So this hugely dominant issue won't become dominant in Congress because Epstein and friends, Johnson and friends are swimming away from the Epstein issue. It's, again, a bit of parliamentary stuff, and it's the bottom line really being served, which is we don't want to talk about Epstein in service to our supreme leader, Donald Trump, who we know wants none of this Epstein stink on him, right? That's what's happening on the congressional side. Meantime, there is an effort to try to make a deal. I think that's what's happening with Ghislaine Maxwell. And so
it seems like they can't get to her fast enough. Everyone's running to Ghislaine. Like, who can get the information from Ghislaine first?
And, you know, it's interesting, just as an aside, Epstein's become this interesting cultural figure. He clearly was involved in heinous acts of human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not the most important thing going on in America or the world, as I've stated before. Because he is the Epstein case, the Epstein problem is so politically relevant, and it so rocks the Trump boat, that vaults it to a place where it demands public attention. And that's a little bit of why there is a congressional vote, or was to have been, on getting that information out. So with no congressional vote on the release of the Epstein files, because Mike Johnson is finding a way around there being any vote before the recess for the summer. They recess after this week. They now are talking to Ghislaine Maxwell, and they're talking to Ghislaine Maxwell in a way that is somewhat unprecedented. The Deputy Attorney General is going to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell, who is serving 20 years. Why the Deputy Attorney General would meet with Ghislaine Maxwell is, I think, pretty easy arithmetic. The Deputy Attorney General, does anybody know what Todd Blanche, who did he used to represent? Todd Blanche used to represent Donald Trump.
Oh.
That's right. So Donald Trump's former personal attorney, now Deputy Attorney General, is going to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell. This is odd on its face. We'll talk to David K. Johnston about it. But what are they trying to get from Ghislaine Maxwell? At minimum, they want to know what she knows and what her disposition is toward speaking. But let's face it, they already know what she knows. She knows everything. So what they're really doing, I'd suggest, is likely stopping the bleeding ahead of time.
Pardon for your silence?
Right. What deal might we be able to make with you so we can get past this whole ugly mess? You're serving too long a time. Let's face it. We all know it. And I'm here to right that wrong. I, as Todd Blanche, representing the DOJ. Here's the news as it broke today, and then I'll give you a little bit of Alan Dershowitz on this as well. Go ahead, Tony.
Hi, I'm Diane Macedo. We have breaking news. An oversight committee just approved a motion to subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell to testify before Congress. It comes as Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche says he expects to meet with Maxwell in the coming days. Maxwell was convicted of conspiring with and aiding Jeffrey Epstein in his sexual abuse of underage girls and is currently in prison. ABC's Justice Department reporter Alex Mallon has more. So we also have Jay O'Brien on Capitol Hill following this for us. So Jay, I want to start with you since this just happened. What's the latest there, and what are lawmakers really calling for here?
Yeah, this motion to subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell was approved in a subcommittee of the House Oversight Committee. It was brought forward by Tim Burchett, and it got the Republicans on that panel's support. And so now it advances to Chairman James Comer, who's the chair of the overall House Oversight Committee. It tries to force Comer to subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell, but ultimately it looks like the decision will still rest with James Comer as to whether or not he wants to go along with this motion that was approved in, again, that subcommittee of his broader House Oversight Committee. But it comes as Jeffrey Epstein from beyond the grave is really tying up the processes of the House of Representatives here. The House Rules Committee, which is a crucial final stop on legislation before it heads to the House floor, had to cancel their meeting last night, and they're not going to meet for the rest of the week because Republicans on that panel didn't want to have to take tough votes that Democrats were bringing forward on an Epstein-related amendment that would release the DOJ records on this case and on Jeffrey Epstein in general.
We talked about that. Okay, thank you. That was the vote that I talked about, the fact that the vote won't happen to release those Epstein files. But there you see it. There is a congressional effort to subpoena Ghislaine Maxwell for a subcommittee, and there is a, it would seem, somewhat concurrent effort to meet with her that is on the part of Todd Blanche, the former Trump attorney, who is now Deputy Attorney General in the DOJ. Go ahead, Tony. Give me the second cut from that ABC breaking news story. This just happened moments ago.
So, Alex, what's Blanche hoping to accomplish with his meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell?
Yeah, I mean, Diane, this is just the latest unusual turn in how the department is handling the fallout over its decision not to release any more Epstein files. I mean, I've never even heard of the idea of a deputy attorney general going to visit a convicted sex trafficker in prison to potentially discuss what information she might have more than what the department already has in its holdings. And also making this all the more unusual is that Todd Blanche previously served as President Trump's personal defense attorney. And the outrage, obviously, from Democrats over this whole handling of the Epstein files and the withholding of them is that they accuse the administration of potentially covering up President Trump's personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. So the fact that the Deputy Attorney General is now stepping in, given all this vocal attention being put towards this by Congress, including House Republicans and Senate Republicans, and that they're going to try and now step into this process of potentially getting Ghislaine Maxwell to talk on the record about what she knew about Epstein and potential other co-conspirators or associates that she may be able to implicate. I mean, the difference here is that this meeting that Todd Blanche is trying to arrange will be behind closed doors, potentially in the Federal Correctional Institution where she's staying in Tallahassee, Florida. The difference with congressional testimony would be that would be out in the public for all of Americans to hear what she has to say. And obviously, Ghislaine Maxwell has a real incentive to try and tell this administration what it wants to hear here versus, what the public might have just an interest in knowing, because the Justice Department controls whether she continues to serve out a 20-year prison sentence in connection with the heinous crimes that she was convicted for.
Thank you. That's exactly what we were saying, and very well put.
Alan Dershowitz calls her the Rosetta Stone of Epstein and says she knows everything. But
well, I'm sure she does know everything. But the point of meeting with her, if you're Todd Blanche, behind closed doors, again, I'm so glad that was emphasized in that report, is that you can make whatever deal you want with her. You can dry clean her coming comments and her public statements so that before she goes to the subcommittee, you already know what she's going to say. Deal is made, cake is baked, we'll get you reduction in sentence, full pardon, whatever it might be. I mean, I suspect it won't be a full pardon, but I think a sentence reduction probably is in the offing. I mean, a closed door meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell and Todd Blanche, who, again, I'll remind you, used to be Trump's personal attorney. There is only one agenda item, and it is, how can we make sure that what you say is what we want to hear?
But if Trump is, I'm sorry, just a quick question for you. If Trump is already on the hot seat for not releasing files, and all the conspiracy theorists are clamoring for the files, and the more he doesn't release things, the more guilty perhaps it makes him look, then won't a closed door meeting where he tries to button up and close her mouth, wouldn't that make him even look more guilty, and wouldn't that make people even more suspicious?
Of course, on some level, but on another level, he can say, hey, look, we had her testify in the open before Congress. What do you want?
Right.
They can say, well, we want the files. Well, there are too many people who will be damaged with the release of those files. She's given you the pertinent information from those files. I mean, it gives him, Trump, some high ground, which is what they're looking for. They're looking to put this case to bed. So they want to dry clean what she's going to say so it doesn't implicate Trump, but it nevertheless has some nasty associated with it. And then they want to move on. And they can do that, I think, in this series of ways, including the meeting with Ghislaine behind closed doors and then potentially the subcommittee testimony. True conspiracy believers will never buy it. Yeah, but I think Trump's trying to do something, and oh my God, there was no file. It turns out it's all incredible misunderstanding. That line, the Pam Bondi line, that ain't flying. So they need something else. Here is a little bit of what Kim is talking about, Dershowitz, and the reference to the fact that there are key bits of testimony that would help this in terms of clarity from Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yes, she should be potentially offered congressional immunity to go and testify. Do you think that would happen? And what kind of information would she have that we haven't seen?
She knows everything. She is the Rosetta Stone. She knows everything. She arranged every single trip with everybody. She knows everything. And if she were just given use immunity, she could be compelled to testify. I'm told that she actually would be willing to testify, and there'd be no reason for her to withhold any information. So I don't see any negative in giving her the kind of use immunity that would compel her to testify. So she ought to be summoned in front of a congressional committee.
So that's one thing. He's saying, yeah, get her in front of the subcommittee. Here is a little bit more on how much she knew. because she was really Epstein's right-hand person.
The key to this case is Ghislaine Maxwell, and that Congress should give her some form of use immunity to get her
This is Dershowitz
to talk,
speaking.
because you said she has all the secrets. My question to you
I'm sorry, Harvey Levin
is,
speaking.
what's in it for her to do that if all she gets is use immunity? What about cutting her a deal with the sentence she currently has?
Well, that should be done. The sentence she currently has is not a sentence that was really imposed on her. It was imposed on the dead Jeffrey Epstein. You don't get 20 years for being an assistant or a secretary, even if there were serious crimes. And she had nothing to do with any alleged trafficking. In any event, she should have her sentence commuted. She should be given total immunity, called before Congress, and she'll tell everything. She knows everything. She made all the reservations. When I had to fly down to represent him in front of the Palm Beach District Attorney's office or in front of the U.S. Attorney's office, she's the one who made the arrangements. She knows who was on his plane. She knows who was innocent. If there were any guilty people, she knows who they are. And if you gave her complete immunity and let her out of prison and made a deal with her, this would solve the problem forever.
By the way, this is an important point. Well, Dershowitz, another crooked attorney, says, Vicky, somebody was saying she was more than an assistant. Tammy, I said, that's true. She was more than an assistant. She was more than just a logistics person. If you read the testimony and the depositions that you can read, the victim testimonies, and there's been civil action in all of this, you can read the statements of many of these Epstein victims who brought cases forward. You see that Ghislaine Maxwell was more than just an assistant. She was more than just somebody keeping track of who was coming and going and setting up trips. She actively, again, based on their testimony, she actively participated in these acts of sexual abuse. So the administration is so shady, we will never know the truth, says Soul Seeker. I believe the pictures and videos, that's enough for me. Yeah. Anyway, that's the latest. And I think it, again, big news that the administration is sending their guy, Todd Blanche, again, former Trump attorney, to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell behind closed doors to make some kind of plan. I mean, he doesn't need to meet with Ghislaine Maxwell to know what Ghislaine Maxwell knows. He knows what Ghislaine Maxwell knows. He's going to meet with her to figure out what Ghislaine Maxwell can say to help the administration and his boss, Donald Trump. And in a reciprocal way, she can accrue some benefit as a result of saying what they want. There's no question, but that is what they will be discussing. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.